Alright, in this final lesson, I'm going to show you how to suppress the initial output from gamepad when a controller is connected. And just as a refresher, it's all of the output here that is emitted from each of the access controls. Now to me, it's important to clean this up, because if a consuming application is handling each of these events, then it could experience some brief, yet unintended side effects, since these events are emitted when a user is not even moving each of the controls. Essentially, I need a way to know that a controller is initializing, so to speak, and if any events are fired from gamepad in this time frame, then I need to suppress them. In order to do this, I will start by adding a new array at the top called Initializing Controller IDs. To populate this new array, I will go down here to the Update Controller IDs function and add any of the recently added device IDs to this array. Now, if you have any experience with JavaScript, you may think, oh yeah, just call Initializing Controller IDs.push and pass it the Connected IDs array, like so. Except, this won't work as expected because Connected IDs is an array, so if we leave this, we'll be pushing an array onto another array, so we'll end up with an array of arrays. What I need to do instead is merge the two arrays by calling apply. Now you can do this a couple of different ways, but the way I'm going to do it is to call array.prototype.push.apply. And then I'll give it the two arrays I want to merge. The first argument I pass to it is the array I want to merge into, and the second argument is the array whose contents I want to merge into the other array, so I'll pass in the Initializing Controller IDs array as the first argument, and the Connected IDs array as the second argument. Now another way to do this is instead of calling array.prototype, you can actually use an instance of an array, so you could say Initializing Controller IDs.push.apply and give it the same two arguments. I think this is a little misleading though, because the Initializing Controller IDs array is used twice, so it's a little confusing as to what the first one is actually doing. For that reason, I'm just going to roll with array.prototype.push.apply. Alright, now that the IDs have been added to the array, I need a way to remove them to prevent controllers from staying in an initialization state, that's kind of a tongue twister, the whole time they're connected. Since the bogus gamepad events are fired as soon as the controller is connected, I think if I set the initialization time frame to 1 second, then I should be able to suppress all of the extraneous events with minimal impact to consuming applications. This should be a little clearer to you here shortly, but the idea that I'm working towards is that if a device is in this new array, then no events will be emitted for that device, even if a user actually presses a button or moves an access control. That's why I want to keep this initialization window as short as possible, because from a coding perspective, we have no idea which events are erroneously being fired from gamepad and which are being fired due to a user actually moving the controls, since they are emitted the exact same way. This 1 second window should minimize how many user-initiated events we suppress. With that in mind, I'm going to add a call to setTimeout, whose callback will remove all of the connected IDs from the Initializing Controller IDs array after 1 second. Now I misspoke just a little bit, and you can see here that I'm actually using the pullAll function from Lodash to remove the IDs. This function takes the array you want to modify as the first argument, and then an array of values or objects you want to remove from that array as the second argument. So you can read this line as pull all of the IDs in the Connected IDs array from the Initialization Controller IDs array. Another thing to note too is that I'm removing the connected IDs individually instead of just clearing out the whole Initialization Controller IDs array in one fell swoop, because if I just blindly nuke everything in the array, then I will end up wiping out any controller IDs that are added after the setTimeout call is made, but before its callback function is executed. This ensures that if multiple controllers are connected almost simultaneously, then each controller will be given a full 1 second initialization window. Alright, now I need to add a function that checks if a specific device ID is in the new array for each of the control event handlers to call into. I will call the new function isInitializing, and its only parameter will be device ID. This function will need to return a boolean indicating whether or not the specified device ID is in the Initializing Controller IDs array, but before I write the code to do that, I want to point out that the isXbox360 controller function above already has code to check for the existence of a device ID in an array. So rather than writing a very similar line of code, I'm just going to pull this code out and put it in a new reusable function called isDeviceInArray, which will take in a device ID and an array as arguments. Now I can just have the isXbox360 controller and isInitializing functions call into this with their respective arguments. The last thing I need to do now is to just add a call to the isInitializing function in each of the event handlers so that the events are suppressed if this function returns true. In each of the handle axis move, handle button pressed, and handle button released functions, I will add this new call to the if expression like so. Alright, now let's fire up the test console and see if this all works. And I'll just turn on a controller here. And you can see the connected and status messages there, but no bogus output. Wee boggy. But before I get too excited, I want to make sure all of the events are still firing appropriately. Since it's been more than a second since the controller was connected, I should be past the initialization window at this point, so all of the events should fire. Alright, looks like we're good to go, and it doesn't look like the performance really took a hit either from the extra calls I just put in place. Now from here, you can probably find some places where the code could be a little cleaner, such as in the event handlers. If you look at the two button handlers, they're pretty much identical, so those can maybe be refactored to call a shared function that handles all of the logic, and you can just pass in the name of the event to fire. The access control handler is pretty similar to these handlers as well, and could probably be worked into that same refactoring. And as I mentioned before, this module was not designed to keep track of each individual controller, so if you want to set the module up more like a gaming console where each controller operates independently, that could be something cool to do as well. I'm not actually going to make any of these changes here in this course, so if any of these ideas sound cool to you, then I'm going to leave those as exercises for you to do on your own. Well, that wraps up everything I wanted to demonstrate, and I hope you found this series on creating an Xbox 360 controller module not only informational, but also fun. Thanks for watching.